broadcast on 102.9 ES Radio for Western Montana and across the state on SWX television.
I like football!
Now, the 2017 Radio Sports Broadcaster of the Year on the show with back-to-back Montana Broadcaster Association awards for sports coverage and award-winning sports journalism. Here is Ryan Tootell and Colter Nuanez.
Hello, Montana. Can the Big Sky get 5 into the football postseason? Who are the top 5 coaches in the NFL, and can you even name half of the coaches in total in the league? I'll bet you can't, and I don't think Colter can either. We'll find out soon enough. It is Tootell Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio and SWX Montana Television. Outstanding to be with you on a Tuesday afternoon. Hope you are having a wonderful day. Thanks for spending some time with us on your radios, on your televisions, on your devices. We appreciate it very much. We are broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris is at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy, celebrating 30 years in business this month. They are celebrating by giving you 30% off. That's right, 30% off MSRP on select parts and accessories with the purchase of any new Polaris off-road vehicle, Husqvarna and Beta dirt bike, or any Crest pontoon boat. Some restrictions apply. See Kurtz for details. Get to Kurtz Polaris in Missoula and Sealy all month for Kurt's 30-year anniversary sale. Ton of stuff to get to today. We're going to start with the Big Sky Conference. Can the Big Sky Conference get 5 teams into the postseason? An open question, and we're going to look at this through the lens of the top 5 teams in the league playing the other top 5 teams in the league and how the schedule's set up in this grossly imbalanced scheduling that we have talked so much about in the Big Sky Conference. We will get into a little bit of NFL stuff. We will also get into some head coaching stuff. I got some trivia for Colter. Colter, who thinks he is Stump the Schwab type of legit when it comes to trivia, and in some respects, he is and is more. I'm not sure that I'll bet you, Colter, that there's 7 teams you can't name the head coach of. That's what I think. 7 teams.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
That's just irrelevancy.
We'll get there to the top. We'll get that at the top of the hour. Dark Horse in the Big Sky Conference, which we did not get to yesterday, and we will today. But, who cares about all this when Chad Smith and Marilyn Manson are in town on the same day? I mean, how often does that happen?
And Shaky Graves.
Well, I mean, yes. Here's the thing, though. Shaky Graves is great. And I think the more people that, certainly see Shaky Graves live are like, okay, like immediately won over as fans and so forth. But also, Shaky Graves trafficking through Missoula, Montana, through Western Montana this is not new, right? I mean, Shaky Graves has been through here on a number of occasions.
Sure, and he's coming back from Red Ants Pants from the last weekend, which is great.
Right, I get all that.
Well, and
Shaky Manson, this might be a first. And then Chad Smith, he naps down in the Bitterroot yesterday at Hamilton. Now he's up here at Ear Candy in Missoula walking around. Anyway, you want to what's up, Chad?
Welcome to Paparazzi Hour with Tootell Nuanez.
I mean, because we're still in Montana. It's one of the few places still in the world where it matters, where you're like, hey, a famous person. So leave Colter and me alone. You can find other people now today when we're walking around out there.
It is funny. What you said about Shaky Graves is so funny because I think that Missoula has a distinct identity. And I think people that live here for a long time or people that grow up here like we did, I think sometimes you take that for granted. But when you really take a step back and you really analyze it, Missoula has a distinct and powerful identity. And I think when you say something like, it's not surprising that a guy like Shaky Graves has been here before and will continue to come here because Shaky Graves is weird and Missoula is weird. And they go hand in hand. Shaky Graves is a very quintessential Missoula act. He's going to be the perfect act for the Kettle House Amphitheater tonight because he fits right in, right?
No doubt.
And a lot of the performers that come to the Kettle House, from Bela Fleck and the Flecktones and Vic Wooten and some of the great acts that we've seen lately, Slightly Stupid and Revolution. And those are some of the shows I've seen so far this summer. And they all are very much like Missoula, right? They kind of goes hand in hand, and I think that we should feel lucky to live in a place that has such a distinct identity. But then it is also funny because when Chad Smith's here, or when the Rolling Stones are here, or when someone that's not just a Missoula band, or is not for lack of a better term, like a B-list type of act, when it's a true superstar A-list. It is still an outpost, right? But Missoula is still in Montana. And like you said, it's interesting that it's kind of like, wow, people do know that.
Are you lost?
We're
Do you
here.
need help? Do you need some water? Can I build you a campfire? Are you okay? Like, that's the reaction that you get when you're an A-lister walking through Missoula. Like, you certainly have you've made a wrong turn at the light and you ended up somewhere you didn't mean to be. But of course, they're probably here on purpose. So that's great.
No doubt.
Anyhow, we are, we got this thing. It's a phone that they've installed. They call them a telephone now, so you can actually have your voice transported out to us and out over the radio waves. It's a miraculous advancement. So if you'd like to call and talk to us and the rest of the community and the rest of the state on SWX Montana Television, 329-1899 is the phone number. Area code 406-329-1899. All guests join us via the Rankage Brothers RV phone line. We will do day 2 today. Speaking of funky shows coming to town, the B-52s out at the Kettle House Amphitheater in 9 days. A week from Thursday, they'll be out there. We are doing day 2 of Name That Tune. We will do that a little bit later. Again, if you call in, you get the tune correct, you are immediately going to receive 4 tickets to a Missoula Osprey baseball game forthcoming. And you will be entered as one of 4 finalists to get a pair of tickets to that B-52s concert out at the amphitheater. And they're still now year 2, full year 2 in terms of the season of concerts out at the Kettle House. A lot of people have been out there. We all know, the deal. But there's a lot of people that probably still have not been out there. If
Totally.
you haven't gone out there, the music is always going to be good, but whether the type of music and so forth is sometimes even secondary because it's just such a great experience to be out there.
The way that it faces, the way that the sun sets perfectly between the mountains, and you can see it perfectly from the amphitheater. It's the longest sunset you'll ever see every time you go out there. It's amazing, and just for that, to be on the Blackfoot River, outside summer evenings in Missoula,
you can do
watching
worse.
the sunset. That in itself I would pay money to do that, let alone then have somebody play music, let alone then have great music acts like that we've seen in Missoula already this summer.
Pretty good all the way around. So anyway, we'll do the Name That Tune later on today as well. If you want to stream the show and, it's easier that way for you, maybe you're out of my folks, they're in Wisconsin. They certainly got the stream going. Shout out to my people in the Midwest there, the Opportunity Bank, responsible for that, your local bank, your opportunity. Coulter, we wanted to talk a little bit about the Big Sky Conference. We talked a lot about it as we get ready to break camp. Montana State opening up practice Friday. The University of Montana opening up practice. They'll report on Sunday. They will open things up on Monday. They probably won't even start running around until Tuesday.
First day on the River Bowl's Tuesday.
But it's going. We are rocking and rolling. And so the last official week before things are off and happening in fall camp, one final assessment I think is worthwhile for us to do when it comes to getting a look at the postseason. Now, one of the reasons that was given by Doug Fullerton at the time, the former commissioner of the Big Sky Conference, as to why expansion was a good thing when it came to football, was his hope that the Big Sky Conference, which was a powerhouse in football nationally from a conference standpoint, would become even a larger powerhouse and would be starting to get standardly 4 teams in and occasionally, perhaps even often, 5 teams into the FCS playoff. That has never happened. That never happened. Never came to fruition.
It's only ever happened twice. 5. It's only ever happened twice in the history of the FCS, period. The Missouri Valley has had it happen twice with 5 teams, and then last year, inexplicably and incorrectly, the Colonial Athletic Association got 6 teams in last year. Vindication with Maine, the regular season champion, making it to the semifinals. But Bloody Sunday on the rest of it. I mean, it was every other CAA team lost in the first round, including because 2 of them had to play each other, which is just the dumbest thing in the world to me. 2 teams from the same league having to play each other in the playoffs if they're the 5th and 6th teams from their respective leagues.
Right.
That in itself is just weird. So, but like you said, those are the Power 3. They talk about the Power 5 in the FBS. The Power 3 are the CAA, the Missouri Valley, and the Big Sky. And the Big Sky is the lone league that has never gotten 5 teams in.
And it seems like there's a lot of reasons for that to me, and I don't think this is really all that much about, it's not about respect, or it's not about, the voters or whatever. I think it's about which teams have been good and which teams haven't. Like you said, Coulter, many times, but and this goes back to, I think, Southern Utah, but if Southern Utah or Sacramento State or whatever is one of, the leaders in the Big Sky, maybe a champion, maybe a co-champion, something like that, the perception isn't that team is really good. The perception is that the Big Sky Conference is down.
Totally.
And what we have had, particularly with Montana and Montana State have both been good to quite good in the last 12 years, but almost never at the same time. And other teams have been good that haven't been the traditional East, even though Eastern Washington is great. They've been a staple. Weber State, since Jay Hill's taken over, has been a bit of a staple. But other teams have sort of bounced around, be it NAU, be it Sac State, be it Southern Utah, and even North Dakota when they were in the conference and shared a title. And then all of a sudden people are going, well, we're not letting the fifth team that might be Northern Arizona or maybe even Montana State into the postseason when Montana's obviously down, when Idaho's not in the conference, whatever the argument might be. And so that has been the case. But this year, and I want to go through this with you a little bit, there is clearly a top five going into the season. And that top five is largely the flagship football institutions of the conference, which also matters from a national perception type of look at this.
Totally. I mean, the only way it could be better for the league is if Idaho and Northern Arizona were definitively in the top half of the league. I do think NAU is. That remains to be seen, though, with the first new head coach since 1998. I mean, you're talking about a full generation. It never happens in college football. So this is really, it's uncharted territory. We don't know how Northern Arizona is going to be without Jerome Sowers at the helm. The last time Jerome Sowers was at the helm, NAU had barely even been in the Big Sky. It'd been like 10 years since NAU had even joined the Big Sky. So there's a lot of uncertainty there, but I do expect Northern Arizona to be good just because they have more talent than most teams in the league. They always have. And they have talent at specific positions, specifically quarterback, in Case Cookus, that really puts them, I think, as the sort of dark horse, the team that could muddle it up. I mean, if Case Cookus just straight up went out and was a first-team All-League quarterback and Northern Arizona made the playoffs, it wouldn't surprise me. It really wouldn't.
Yeah.
It really wouldn't. But, if they just didn't really adjust to the new head coach and they went 4-8, it wouldn't surprise me either. Well, but regardless, the only way that, like, to your point, Weber State has never really had the national brand of a lot of the other schools in the Big Sky Conference, but they are a little bit of a known commodity as a charter Big Sky Conference member of the league since 1963, and now with being in a perennial top 10 team, they've been in the top 10 basically every single week of the polls for the last 2.5 years, certainly the last two seasons in the duration. So that is really good for the league. Eastern Washington, proven commodity, 6 of Big Sky titles this decade alone, the last national championship for the league. Montana State, proven commodities as well. And I do think that UC Davis is very, very interesting because the 4 teams from the Great West that joined the Big Sky Conference, North Dakota, Southern Utah, Cal Poly, UC Davis. Cal Poly has been in the playoffs 3 times since they joined the Big Sky. They shared the league title in 2012. During those good runs, they were in the top 25. Flirting with the high teens and the low 20s. Good, but not nationally elite. Southern Utah had to win 9 straight games to even break into the top 15 when they won the Big Sky title, and they got no respect hardly at all. And North Dakota, they were always in the teens, but they had a hard time inching their way ever into the top 10. But UC Davis beat San Jose State, destroyed Idaho, and then won one more league game, and they're thrust into the stratosphere. All of a sudden, they're a top 15 team. They're a top 10 team.
Here's the thing. Here's what I'm starting to believe about college football in general, and certainly at the FCS level. There's 2 ways to have recognition for your football team. One is from your school, right? If you're Montana, if you're Montana State, if you're at this point, if you're Eastern Washington, okay, obviously North Dakota State, Jacksonville State, some of these teams. If you are good, James Madison, let's put it like this: you're going to get the benefit of the doubt in virtue of the jersey that you got on, okay? In virtue of the institution that you're playing for. The other way, though, to get respect is who's coaching you. Weber State the school, football-wise, I don't think has built the brand enough nationally. Hasn't not that they haven't built it enough like they've done something wrong, but there isn't the history there that is putting them there. But people know who, at this point, Jay Hill is, and respect Jay Hill and trust that he's going to put something on the field that's going to be good. Dan Hawkins is a 30-plus year coach at the FCS and FBS levels. He's a lifer in the game, and people just trust, okay, Dan Hawkins is at UC Davis. They got a really good team, but it's Dan Hawkins' team. So we talked last year about how, of all the teams, would UC Davis be making these giant leaps that North Dakota could never make, that Southern Utah could never make when they were good? I think it's because people go, oh, it's Dan Hawkins' club. We know him. They're going to be good. We trust that. Yes, top 10.
And UC Davis is one of the great coaching cradles in all of college football. You look at all the guys who played for Jim Chochar back in the day, whether it's Paul Hackett or Mike Bellotti or Gary Patterson or Chris Peterson or Dan Hawkins, on to Bob Biggs, who was the longtime head coach at UC Davis. There's all sorts of guys that have reached the top level of college football too. And so then when the California media is writing about this UC Davis team that just beat San Jose State, they can always put those lines into the story. That's what tradition is. Mm-hmm. When you're writing about North Dakota chasing its first ever Big Sky title, that sort of just that's where it begins and ends. It's what being a fledgling Division I program is compared to one that, although UC Davis has only been D1 for about a little bit over a decade, they have so much tradition because of their time as a Division II powerhouse and the guys that have come out of there. I mean, when you're writing stories about North Dakota or Southern Utah, the most prominent alumni that those teams have are guys that have played in the last couple of years. Whereas when you're writing about, Ken O'Brien or JT O'Sullivan, or there's been multiple high draft pick quarterbacks from UC Davis. And so those all that stuff just helps in the fortification of your national brand. And I think that's another reason, along with Dan Hawkins being a reputable coach, that's why UC Davis was able to kind of break down that door.
It's Tootell, Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana television across the state. Let's go through this, though, Coulter. Let's get back into this season and the 5 teams that were, pretty clearly picked to be in that top tier: Montana, Montana State, Eastern Washington, Weber State, and UC Davis. And I went through and I got all of the schedules together for all these teams just against each other, okay? So let's put it like this. Against every other team in conference that all these teams will play, they will be favored in those games regardless of location, okay? Now, maybe things change because of injury or all of a sudden a team jumps up and looks really good later in the season, but as of now, that's the case. So let's talk about the games against one another. The hardest schedule by far is the University of Montana Grizzlies, who play all of them.
Yep.
All of them. They have UC Davis on the road, game 1 in conference, and then they're at home against Eastern Washington, Weber State later on in the year, and then, of course, the Cat Grizz game on the last game of the season, and this is in Bozeman this year. They play all 4 of those teams. Montana State plays just 2. They're at UC Davis on the second to last week of the season, and then, of course, host Montana. Weber State plays 3 of them. They're all road games for Weber, which is crucial. Weber is at Davis, at Montana, and they only play 2, but they're both on the road. I got into the non-conference.
Don't they play Eastern Washington? They don't.
They don't.
They don't.
They do not. They play Cal Poly in a non-conference game, but they're at UC Davis and at UM. UC Davis plays 3 all at home. They host Montana, Weber State, and Montana State. And then Eastern Washington, they only play Montana. Of the top 5, only 1 road trip to Missoula. Everybody else they don't have. Now,
what you just broke down is exactly why I voted in my poll the way I voted. It basically 100% came down to these games that you're talking about. Yes. I voted Eastern Washington 1, not because I actually think they're any better than UC Davis. I actually don't think they're as good as UC Davis. UC Davis just has to play 3 contenders. Eastern Washington just has to play at Montana. Look at Eastern Washington's league schedule. I think Eastern Washington has a chance to stumble to 6 league wins, let alone – I think that they're probably a lock for 6 and wouldn't even have to play that out of their minds to get to 7.
Yeah.
And if they ran the table, if they won in Missoula, 8-0 is on the table for Eastern Washington for sure. And I voted Montana State 2. Because I do think Montana State has a chance to be a 9-win team going into the final 2 games of their league schedule.
Right.
I think they could be 9-2 going into those games, or 8-2 going into those games. And then I voted Weber State 3 because just the 2 games. Or excuse me, I voted UC Davis 3 because they have everybody at home. I voted Weber State 4 because they just have to play 2 of the contenders, and then I voted Montana 5. And again, I don't really think that there's that much difference between Montana and Weber State this year. I think Montana's better at quarterback. I think Weber State's better defensively and on the lines. But I think that there's not that much difference in the 2 teams.
Oh, I think.
I picked Montana 5th only just because I just think that if Montana was to split the 4 contenders, that would be a great deal for the Grizz.
I don't think.
And if they could win 3 out of 4, they could win the league.
Any of these teams, with the exception of maybe Davis, let's put it like this: they are all totally equitable in the following respects. They have great strengths and big question marks. All of these teams. UC Davis really is the one team that doesn't because they're returning everybody, and you have some expectation there. But and that is what makes the imbalanced schedule so influential. And okay, yeah, you got to line up and go play who you play. But if everybody's about the same talent wise, and all of a sudden you got to play a 9 out of 10 difficulty as opposed to a 3 out of 10 difficulty, that's what it is. Now, what is the true difficulty? You never know till the end, and you can look back and see, oh, well, guess what? Idaho State actually was the 3rd best team in the Big Sky. That was a tough opponent or not. That sort of thing. But looking forward, there's clearly easier paths here than harder ones. Eastern Washington on one extreme, Montana on the other.
Totally. 2 points there, though. I got to retract my statement where I think that Eastern could stumble their way to 6 league wins and should be a shoo-in for 7 and could get to 8. Only because, as we've seen so many times, you never know what's going to happen when you go to places like the Alaris Center in Grand Forks, North Dakota, or Holt Arena in Pocatello, Idaho, or maybe it's 105 degrees on a September day in Sacramento, and Sac State just lures you into a shootout, and all of a sudden you lose 59-56. Like it happens in the Big Sky. The Big Sky is the craziest league because of the travel. Like you just never know. The unbalanced schedule. Here's the part that makes the unbalanced schedule the most wild: is you might have a group of kids that have never been to a place, even though. You might have 5th-year seniors that have never stepped foot on a field. That's a league game because of the unbalanced schedule. Like
even against a particular opponent.
Yeah, Montana State did not play at Northern Colorado until 2 seasons ago. 2 seasons ago, Montana State played at Northern Colorado for the first time since 2010. That's crazy. That's a whole coaching staff. That's a whole different program. Yeah, it was like 3 guys. I remember I interviewed Daenerys McGee, and I said, hey, you were playing quarterback on this team last time you guys went down there. You're the only person in the program that's been to Greeley. Mm-hmm. How do you navigate that? So you just never know how it's going to happen. But the other point I think is worth making is that everybody in the league, from administrators to coaches to athletes, either vocally or sort of subliminally talk about how they hate this unbalanced schedule. They think it's unfair. Most of the coaches are very outspoken about it. We need to do something. We need to do something. And I don't think any coach wants to dodge the good teams. I think that's actually half of the frustration. It's not necessarily who you miss. It's like Jeff Choate told us, and Bobby Houck echoed his sentiments. Montana State should just play Eastern Washington. They should just play Eastern Washington every year. Yes. Montana State should play Idaho every year. It just should. That's just how it should be. But if you have the Grizz schedule, here's the way that I think you absolutely have to approach it. Is not that you have to play all 4 contenders, that you get to. Because guess what? If you're Montana and you win those 4 games and then you figure out how to split your other ones, or if you split those 4 games and you figure out how to win all 4 of your other ones, your 6-2 is better than somebody else's 7-1 or 8-0.
No doubt.
And if you say Montana ran the table against those 4 and they took care of business in their other games, even a 7-1 Grizz team that stubbed their toe in one of the contending games or one of the non-contending games, because you played this schedule, you're top 5 team. You're straight up. You're getting a bye in the playoffs, and you're a seed. You're everything. It's home games at Washington Grizz until the semis at least.
You know what? My issue is not even with the degree of difficulty or whatever. Here's my issue. Montana playing all 4 teams, of the presumptive top 5.
Yep.
Puts so much more pressure on them in the other 4 games when they're playing teams that they should be winning. If you're Eastern Washington and you got one game circled on your entire calendar, you know what? If you lose one or even two others, bummer. But if Montana goes and loses to a Sac State, it's a problem because of now what they have to do. Because I think splitting these 4 games would be, I think, reasonable, but also very good for the University of Montana. If they went 2-2 against Davis, Eastern Weber, and Montana State, if they're 2-2 in those 4, I think that's really good. But you've already now got, potentially built in 2 losses, and if you've got a third loss now against a team, that you were supposed to beat, which, by the way, happens to everybody in the Big Sky Conference at some point, to your point, where teams jump up and get you that you don't think will, upsets, all that kind of stuff. It puts a ton of pressure on you that other teams simply do not have to have.
That's why Eastern Washington has won the league 6 out of the last 8 years, because they don't lose the games that they're not supposed to. That's how you consistently win the league title, is not losing those games.
One other point, though, that I'd like to make, and I'd like to bring in the non-conference schedule to this. UC Davis, they play 3 of the 4 teams. They're all at home. But guess what? They're also at Cal and at North Dakota State, thank you very much, in the non-conference. Hats off to Dan Hawkins. Go get it, buddy. But, I mean, that's, no picnic. So they have a very difficult schedule if you take it as a whole, as good as this team I think is going to be.
One second. Here's the internal narrative that's so hilarious to me. Is Cal is in a state of disarray. Cal Berkeley is in a state of disarray athletically. They have been operating negative $20 million or more for the last couple of years. It's been not a good situation. They are trying to figure out what to do, how to keep up. The luster and the allure of Cal is just, it's not caught up with, it's not kept pace with the rest of the Big Sky Conference. When you look right over the fence and Stanford is just killing everything. And then you look, down the road and UCLA and USC are just monsters, even if their football programs have been very mediocre lately. It's still just monstrous, the amount of resources and the facilities and everything. I mean, if you look at Cal's football stadium compared to almost everybody else in the Pac-12, that in itself is just such a display. UC Davis is on a roll just as a university broadly. I mean, their enrollment is at all-time sky high, almost 40,000 students. Their endowment is over $1 billion. They have so many lucrative so many very wealthy alumni across the country. There's a real narrative there that UC Davis is the better Cal school than UC Berkeley. That's not been the case for 50-plus years. So if Davis was to go win that game somehow, it would be very detrimental to Cal's athletic department as a whole, and it would be a huge boost and sort of a confirmation of an already existing narrative.
And by the way, probably the easier of the 2 games when you talk about.
Are you
Cal
kidding me? Are you kidding me? Especially matchup wise, because Cal's willing to get into a little bit of a shootout with you. North Dakota State's just trying to bludgeon you.
The other things that I wanted to point out about the non-conference, Eastern Washington, they open at Washington. Okay, but they also travel down to Alabama to play Jacksonville State. Now, I don't know where Jacksonville State is. They had a high water mark where they were in the Final Four in the semifinal of the national championship tournament a couple years ago. But that's still a very good team, and that's a big, big trip to go on. So Eastern Washington has a substantial, has a tough non-conference as well coming into what looks to be a pretty nice conference schedule that they got.
Yeah, the Eastern Washington Jacksonville State game is going to be a top 10 matchup. In my poll, I got a vote in the FCS Stats national poll now, and so I just filled out my poll this morning. In my poll, I had Eastern Washington at 6 in the nation, and I have Jacksonville State at 7.
Okay.
Jacksonville State has won the Ohio Valley, I think, 3 years in a row. The thing about Jacksonville State is because of where they're located and because of their academic standards and because of their home, they have one of the better home atmospheres in the country.
Yeah.
Those 3 things make them just SEC light. They get more transfers, aside from probably James Madison, than anybody in the Eastern FCS region.
We talked about Weber State. They only have the 2 games against the top 5, UC Davis and UM. They're both on the road, but they have 3 big-time non-conference games at San Diego State, at Nevada, and then also Northern Iowa, who they host, which is this Missouri Valley Big Sky Challenge, which so much is made of, and really has so much more impact in terms of the perception that will exist from these games going through the season will last to the very end and
Totally.
influence the voters greatly. So that's a big, big game. But here's the one that I wanted to point out more than all of them. And we know Montana State's, at Lubbock at Texas Tech to open. But the University of Montana, now they're going to Oregon on September 14th. By the way, we'll be at the Desperado tomorrow giving away tickets to that game. So come join us down there. We'll talk more about that. They host North Alabama and Monmouth in their first 2 home games of the season on the 7th and 21st. If you pencil those in as wins, which I think is reasonable to do, and, a loss presumptively to the Ducks, the first game of the season that the University of Montana plays at South Dakota is monumental at a bunch of different levels. It's monumental conference to conference. It's absolutely giant to Montana, the football team, when you face the schedule that we've already gone through and the difficulty that they have to go through. I'm not going to say the first game of the season is a must win, but to be 3-1 potentially going into the opener, and again, for what it's worth, and to have a win over a good, Yotes team in South Dakota and an established program and all of that stuff, it will matter so much. And when you get to, Montana versus Montana State, if it's +1 or -1 in terms of the record that Montana has, it's going to be it just could mean the difference between everything, between being a playoff team and not, on that very first game. And last year's Gold Rush game at Montana State with Northern Iowa coming in, was it or Western Illinois? Excuse me, Western Illinois.
Western Illinois was for Montana State. Yep.
That was an absolute, and Jeff Choate didn't say it beforehand, but he said it after because they did win. He goes, "This was a must-win." I mean, we had to have this game today in Bozeman to open the season, and the way the schedule sets up, the import of that game on August 31st against South Dakota just cannot be overstated.
Absolutely. I mean, when I put pencil to paper, I type out the entire Big Sky Conference schedule, and then I go through and I pick every single game, non-conference and conference, for every team in the league. And when I put pencil to paper outside of the South Dakota game that you talk about and outside of the Montana State game, because we have a company policy, Skyline Sports, we do not pick the Cat Grizz game.
No.
Period. Maybe we'll give you a 24-hour ahead of the game prediction. That's it. I don't pick that game until the 3rd week of November, ever.
Till the day of.
So, but you take that game out, throw it out, because that game's a toss-up no matter what, and take out your South Dakota game that you're talking about. And when I put pencil to paper, I have the Grizz beating Monmouth and North Alabama, losing to Oregon. I have them losing at UC Davis in their conference opener. I have them beating Idaho State in their first conference home game. I got them winning at Sacramento State. Then I have them losing to Eastern Washington at home. I have them winning at Portland State. I have them beating Idaho at home. And then I have them beating Weber State in Missoula, bringing them to 7-3 besides the South Dakota game. So to your point, if they lose the South Dakota game, 7-4 is a pretty realistic record going in the Cat Grizz game, and that makes the Cat Grizz game a must win.
Got to have it.
If they are 7 say they're 8-3, I think they're in, even if they lost to the Cats.
Yeah, I mean it just can't be overstated how big a game. Now, here's what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen. They're going to, outside of those two, they are going to be 7-3, but it won't be the ones that you picked. There's going to be 2 losses in there that you're going to go, how'd you lose it? And then 2 wins, and you go, wait, beat the Ducks? And then you lost to Idaho State? That's what happened?
There's a couple, I can't see Montana losing at Portland State. I think that game is going to be a game filled with redemption.
I think
last year they just looked. Last year was the first, last, and only time I've ever seen a Bobby Houck team look unprepared. Straight up, and it didn't happen again the rest of the season. They actually went on a little bit of a run, aside from the turnover fest that happened in North Dakota. Yeah. But after that, then they just straight ran through Idaho and Southern Utah, just killed them. But I expect Montana to be raring to go for that game. Sacramento State, I don't know. I mean, who knows? Like you're saying, maybe that's when you stub your toe. But the other one that I will almost guarantee is I guarantee you Bobby Houck will not lose his first Washington Grizzly date with the Idaho Vandals.
I would right now. I don't care the number. I'll pick Montana to cover the Portland State and the Idaho.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can always say the Cat Grizzlies game is going to be a coin flip because there's so much energy on both sides, but like Bobby Hauck's going to want to bury Idaho 10,000 feet below Washington Grizzly Stadium.
Yes, he will. It's Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, from the FCS to the NFL, and a development in Miami, which this is not having to do, by the way, with firing your offensive line coach 4 practices into the season. This is about tabbing a starter at quarterback who isn't a top 10 pick in the first round. So we'll get to that right after this. But all day, what do we do around here, Colter? We give things away. We hook people up. Alpine Touch. It's our favorite spice. Why? Because it's the best spice. And
the best.
They are giving away a 4-pack of spices. Colter, tell them about it.
I got all sorts of goodies for you today. Put on that hat, Gus. Show them the hat.
Yeah.
Alpine Touch hat. Little small.
There we go. No, I got it.
Right here, we got 4 big mountain flavors in the little travel. So you can take it to your friend's house, go into a barbecue, tell them, spice it up with these bad boys. It's got the all-purpose season, pepper blend, hickory smoked, and chili sublime. You can go online right now, alpinetouch.com. Get this for $14.99. Pretty darn good deal. But if you give us a call right now, second caller, all you got to do is give your name and phone number to the boys in the back. We'll send you this big 4 mountain flavors travel pack, Alpine Touch hat. Hey, we'll give you some Alpine Touch sunflower seeds as well. Just give us a call. Second caller, 329-1899. We'll give you some Alpine Touch spits, and an Alpine Touch hat. Alpine Touch, Montana special spice.
Don't mess around with Mother Nature. Your home is your biggest investment. For protection that lasts, don't trust your home to anything less than Sick & Prolux stains from Garden City Paint and Glass. Sick & Prolux stains are tough enough to take on Montana's 4 seasons, providing excellent moisture resistance for outdoor railings, decks, and outdoor furniture. Sick & Prolux exterior and interior stains. Available only at Garden City Paint and Glass in Missoula, across from the Southside McDonald's at 3217 Brook Street.
In Western Montana, we know shopping local matters, and you may think you'd pay more for the quality and customer service that comes with it, but not at Selway Armory. Selway Armory is locally owned with knowledgeable specialists that can answer your questions. In addition to the expertise, though, Selway Armory also has a bigger selection and lower prices than the box stores. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with the experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit E6, and online at selwayarmory.com. Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes too. Book online at CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, who pump it up, pump it up.
Last minute barbecue invitation? Stop at Town Pump on the way. Pick up White Claw, Truly, and Smirnoff Seltzers 12-pack cans for only $14.99. Save the other arm to pick up Gardettos and Chex Mix. Buy one, get one free. Be the barbecue hero with a little help from Town Pump.
Town Pump, right down the road, pump it up. Oh, yeah.
Hey everybody, Ryan Tootell, and I'm here with Josh of the Advocates Injury Law Firm. Josh, there's a lot of lawyers in this area. What makes you different?
At the Advocates, we primarily focus on injury cases. That gives us the experience and the knowledge to correctly evaluate your case and work with insurance companies and other attorneys so you get exactly what you deserve to make you whole again. We take really good care of our clients, and we're going to fight for every single dollar you deserve.
Call 640-4444 or online at montanaadvocates.com. There are a lot of lawyers. You deserve an advocate.
Welcome to today's lottery drawing. And today's winning numbers are not yours, not yours, and another number that's not yours. And the final number is not yours.
When it comes to having money, don't rely on luck. Brew your own coffee at home instead of buying that latte. Brown bag it to work instead of ordering it. Go to feedthepig.org for more free ideas on how to save. Feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon. Ryan Tootell, Colter Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Sports Center. In a reversal of trends from the past two summers, the Bozeman Bucks are surging at the Montana-Alberta American Legion Class AA tournament this week. Monday, the Bucks posted a 10-0 Mercy Rule victory over the Billings Royals in the undefeated semifinal game at Deller Park in Billings. The second-seeded Bucks were the number one seed each of the last two seasons, only to fall short of the elusive state title. Now, Bozeman will face number one Missoula, a 3-0 victor over Billings earlier yesterday. The number 4 Lethbridge knocked out number 6 Helena 4-1 in a loser-out game Monday. The Elks take on the Royals right now. They are playing in progress. We'll update as we can, and the Mavs and the Bucks begin at 7 o'clock.
Mavs beat the Scarlets, for those wondering. Royals and Scots, two different Billings Legion clubs. Longtime Missoula golf coach Julia Jones is the newest inductee to the Montana State Golf Association Hall of Fame. Jones was the head coach at Loyola from 2000 until 2010 before shifting into an assistant role. 2014, she took over once again as the head coach. Loyola has claimed 3 Class B state titles over the last 2 decades.
Joey Moore of Billings is the Montana Men's State Amateur Golf Champion after a red-hot first 2 rounds helped propel him to victory. Moore, who just finished his first year at San Diego State, was 14 under after 2 days, which you should just be disqualified after that, if that's too good.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center is brought to you by Aspen Sound.
If you ever get to 14 under ever, you should just be barred. You should just be disallowed from playing. Anyway, he did shoot a 6 over 78 on the final round. 78, 6 over. Still won by 3 over Riggs Johnston. Those of you keeping track at home. It's Tootell Nuanez. It's 102.9 ESPN Radio. It's SWX Montana Television. 7 minutes from now, we're going to name that tune for tickets to the Osprey and a forthcoming Osprey game, which you will get for getting the song right, and you will be one of 4 finalists to go to the B-52s concert a week from Thursday out at the Kettle House Amphitheater. So stick around with us for that. But Colter, I just wanted to mention this quickly because this makes me look bad, and so anything that I can find that makes me look like I don't know what I'm talking about, I'm going to put that out there and let the people be a part of it. By the way, we are broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris Studios. July is Kurt's 30th birthday. That's right now for 2 more days. You got 2 days left to go take advantage of. Are you ready? 30% off. That's right, 30% off is how they're celebrating, giving that to you off of MSRP on select parts and accessories. With the purchase of any new Polaris off-road vehicle, Husqvarna and Beta dirt bike, or any Crest pontoon boat, some restrictions apply. See Kurtz for details. Kurtz Polaris in Missoula and Sealy. Today and tomorrow, then it's all over. Their birthday party is over. So get in there and check it out. Colter, down in Miami, they've just fired their offensive line coach, and now today they come out and say that Josh Rosen is not the leader. They didn't come out and name a starter, but said that Ryan Fitzpatrick has done the better job thus far in camp and is leading what was an open quarterback competition for the Miami Dolphins. Ryan Fitzpatrick from Harvard University, who's, I don't know, is he 37? 36, 37 years old, Ryan Fitzpatrick. And
36.
Josh Rosen, the 10th overall pick in last year's draft, and he's already losing to the old man. Now, look it. You and I love Fitzpatrick, right? I mean, we love the whole thing that he's got going and how he gets out there, and all of a sudden, he shows up for, Jameis Winston and throws for 7,000 yards and 12 touchdowns and all the whole thing. But if you are Josh Rosen and you cannot beat out Ryan Fitzpatrick for a job in Miami, I mean, this is nail in the coffin stuff, right, Colter? Where not a bad, but a very average, mediocre year, a very rookie year, if I might say it like that, in Arizona. A new regime comes in there, and now all of a sudden you find yourself in Miami, and you're like, okay, I'm going to go be the man in Miami, and you can't beat out Ryan Fitzpatrick, and I think you start to get a moniker around the league like, hey, this dude can't play. That's what this feels like to me. Now, this is not a closed competition. Nobody said that Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to be the guy. Maybe it's a motivational tactic. I don't know. But this is concerning to me about Josh Rosen, who I have continually held out optimism about.
Ryan Fitzpatrick beating people out, I think, shouldn't be a surprise to us anymore. I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick has had a nice career, man.
Of course he has. He's still playing football.
He's thrown for over 3,500 yards 5 times with a high water mark of 3,905 yards. He's thrown more than 20 touchdowns. He's thrown more than 23 touchdowns 4 times with a high water mark of 31. I mean, he's been pretty darn good at a lot of different stops. I think that if you have a quarterback competition between a young quarterback and Ryan Fitzpatrick under a new coaching staff early on in fall in training camp, that portion of the calendar, I would honestly actually be surprised if any young player would ever be ahead of Ryan Fitzpatrick early, because Ryan genius. Ryan Fitzpatrick got a perfect score on the Wonderlic test. Ryan Fitzpatrick went to Harvard. Ryan Fitzpatrick is in the NFL for one reason alone, because of his brain. So it's no surprise to me that 2 guys that are both new in Miami under a new coaching staff, that the guy who is, in his 15th year in the NFL, who has all this mental aptitude, mental prestige like Ryan Fitzpatrick, it's not surprising to me that he's ahead of Josh Rosen. And also, like you said, maybe it's a motivational tactic. The Chosen Rosen is his nickname. You can't just give the entitled kid the starting job right out the gates.
Yeah, I mean, maybe so. And I think a lot of what you say is right. And the other thing, though, that is, I don't know if it's concerning about me, but here's what's odd, right? And look, man, if you're going to Harvard or if you're Josh Rosen, you've had a lot of things go your way in life, okay? But Ryan Fitzpatrick is like the ultimate relatability guy in the NFL.
No doubt.
Right? Like his teammates love him.
He's like you. You're very smart, so you make everybody like you because you know how to be cool.
They can't throw a football.
But you know how to be cool, just like Ryan Fitzpatrick knows how to be cool.
But yeah, he goes in there and but he is funny and he does like relate to everybody. It seems like he can go around.
I mean,
and wants to talk to everybody. And I'm not saying that Josh Rosen isn't that, but he's a kid and he is a guy who's had a lot sort of, it's just come easily to him. And now all of a sudden, if it isn't, the question is, are you going to be able to be humble enough to accept that? Or are you going to take your ball and go home, And the latter option probably finds you out of football a lot sooner and looking like a bust than what people thought.
Ryan Fitzpatrick, if there was a list of the top 10 or top 100 teammates of the last 20 years, I guarantee you that Ryan Fitzpatrick is among the most beloved. Every team he's ever played on. That's why it's so interesting to me that Ryan Fitzpatrick has played for the Rams, Bengals, Bills, Titans, Texans, Jets, Bucks, and Dolphins. So count them up. That's 9 NFL teams.
But I think a lot of that is him calling his own shot, right? Get a 1-year deal and then find out what your next, best case scenario landing spot is. You know who else is going to be on that list? Chase Daniels, right? He's been in the league for 12 years.
Yeah, Chase Daniels has been there's a difference to me, though, between Ryan Fitzpatrick and Chase Daniels.
Well, Ryan's played.
Chase Daniels has dedicated his life to being a backup quarterback. And that's a distinct thing in the NFL.
Yes.
Chase Daniels will never be on the depth chart ahead of a first-round draft pick ever. Ryan Fitzpatrick's a different type of guy, though, because you do bring in Ryan Fitzpatrick to compete with your top 10 draft pick because if he beats him out, it tells you 2 things, that you're in okay hands with Ryan Fitzpatrick, and, like you said, that's a big red flag on the guy that he just beat out. Mm-hmm. He's a great litmus test type of guy. You bring him into camp and you say, because I think Ryan Fitzpatrick he's one of those guys he's between 20th and 30th best quarterback in the league. So he's good enough to start for some bad teams.
I think that might be underselling him.
You had to be screaming and yelling about the Red Rocket yesterday, Andy Dalton.
Yeah.
Who'd you rather have? Ryan Fitzpatrick or Andy Dalton?
I think they're very similar.
And for the money, I'm taking Ryan Fitzpatrick all day.
No, you know why you're taking Ryan Fitzpatrick?
Because he's way cooler than Andy Dalton.
For the exact
he doesn't wear his rubber wedding ring during games.
Because you like him. That's it.
But that matters. But what are we talking about here? We're talking about the NFL. What is one of the most important parts about playing quarterback in the NFL? How did Brett Favre play for 39 years? Because he's the coolest dude in the room.
Kept getting up.
Yeah, that's a good point. But also because he's the coolest dude in the room.
Yeah.
Most quarterbacks are the coolest dudes in the room. And then you have cyborgs like Tom Brady. And you have petulant brats like Aaron Rodgers.
Oh. It's just, what's Kirk Cousins?
Oh, my God.
Just a lost
Kirk Cousins is like the 49th best quarterback in the league. I hate Josh Rosen. I'd take Josh Rosen over Kirk Cousins. I'd take Ryan Fitzpatrick over Kirk Cousins.
Hey, in 10 minutes, we're going to quiz Coulter on coaches in the NFL, see if we can stump him a little bit on a position that has more turnover than even college at this point in time. So we'll get to that. But next, we're going to get you hooked up. We're going to name that tune, and you are going to get some tickets to go to an Osprey game and also be entered to be a finalist to win tickets to the B-52s concert a week from Thursday. We're going to do that with you. Play a little game right after this. Hey, Coulter, you and I, we love to do a lot of things together, watch football, barbecue, occasionally suck down a cold one. But there's maybe nothing you and I like to do more together than play a nice round of golf.
Especially when you aren't attempting to break your clubs. The other day you played well, and it was so soothing. Ryan gets very mad on the golf course.
Part of my perhaps why I don't play golf. It's kind of a degenerative issue. First of all, everybody gets mad, don't they?
Yes, I don't think everyone breaks their driver.
No, listen. First of all, there was that happened one time, and that was, you have to admit, that was as much on the driver as it was on me.
It was. I think he probably had been getting worn out earlier on throughout the season, though.
It's because I
the Ryan Tootell double-handed axe chop with the driver is not really that good for the sturdiness of the club.
Taught me a lesson. I need to settle down a little bit. Nonetheless, occasionally I shake one into the woods, and I don't love the game as much, but nonetheless I do love the game, and many of us do. And if you're looking to play, Canyon River is where you want to go. The Canyon River Golf Club out in East Missoula, one of the most spectacular settings in a state that's full of spectacular settings. East Missoula offers one of the great ones along the Clark Fork River, right in the valley of the mountains. Beautifully manicured course, set up 18-hole championship course. And this year, with a brand new fleet of golf carts set up with the Shark Experience. The Shark Experience, an interactive tool to help you navigate around the course, gives you distances. You can set up shots with a touchscreen and everything else, but also with surround sound. You can listen to the Red Hot Chili Peppers just as loud as you would like to off of the Bluetooth. Perhaps Marilyn Manson is up your alley, or Shaky Graves, or all of the above, or none of the above, however you like to do it. Also, satellite radio. It's got everything. You can order food on the deal. It is really nice. And also, they now have fin cycles. You want to really if you need to play 18 holes in 45 minutes, you get a fin cycle. And you go ripping around the course on a golf cart motorcycle, and it is as fun as it gets. I did this a couple weeks ago and had an absolute blast on it. So Canyon River got them. They got a group of those things that you can take out as well. Online at canyonrivergolfclub.com. You can reserve tee times there. Save a ton of money. Booking online. They always have hot deals every single day on particular tee times. So you want to get out there on the cheap. And all the greens are playable, and the course right now, as we in July, spectacular shape. So go check out Canyon River and canyonrivergolfclub.com.
Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes too. Book online at canyonrivergolfclub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River. Hey folks, Ryan Tootell, and I'm here with Josh of the Advocates. Josh, do most injury accidents end up in court?
Luckily, most personal injury cases can be settled out of court through a fair negotiation with an insurance company. However, sometimes it is necessary. I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to get a fair settlement. Luckily, most personal injury cases can be settled out of court with a fair negotiation with the insurance company. However, I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to get the right settlement for you.
It's Josh at the Advocates, 640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com.
For Lawrence Coffee Company wants to thank you, our customers, for voting us the Triple Crown in Missoula this year. You awarded us Best Barista, Best Coffee, and Best Coffee Hut. We work hard to serve superior products with all natural ingredients, provide great customer service, and offer a loyalty program like no other. We are a Montana family-owned and operated company, and we look forward to serving you throughout our native western Montana.
Under the big sky, Lawrence Coffee Company.
Jayco and Rangich Brothers are teaming up once again. We take pride in being Western Montana's #1 Jayco dealer and strive to continually offer you the best quality, pricing, and reliability. To celebrate the arrival of summer, we are offering July Hot Buys. From RVs to parts and service, we've got you covered. Save big on Jayco J-Flight SLX 264 Bunkhouse Travel Trailer. Sleep 7 starting at only $14,995 with payments as low as $149 per month OAC. Don't miss our July Hot Buys going on now. Only where a handshake means something. Rangich Brothers RV Center.
You're a big league fan. You expect big league service. At the Desperado, you get exactly that. With 35 flat screens, ice-cold brews on tap, and Missoula's #1 wings, you're free to sit back and enjoy every pitch. This summer, make the Desperado your baseball home away from home. Cool off after work, relax on the weekends, soak in some great food and drinks, and watch your team make yet another great push for October. And hey, if yours can't do it, there's plenty of other teams and fun to go around at the Desperado Sports Tavern on South Russell across from the Y.
Hey, Tootell, Nuanez here. Can't tell you how many times we've heard the face for radio joke since we came on SWX television, but it's been a fun endeavor so far.
And now our esteemed producer Tommy is pushing the envelope even further. We got our own YouTube channel.
That's right. If you want to watch us every day from your computer, your tablet, your cell phone, you can check out Tootell and Nuanez on YouTube.
Tootell and Nuanez live every weekday from 4 to 6 in the afternoons on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula, SWX Montana statewide, and now around the planet Earth on YouTube.
Tootell and Nuanez. Listen to the podcast on the TuneIn Radio app or on iTunes, 1029ESPN.com.
You ready for a little musical interlude? And I do mean little. Name that tune. That's what time it is. It's Tootell Nuanez, 1029 ESPN Radio. Outstanding to be with you on this Tuesday afternoon. Hope you are having a wonderful day around the state of Montana, wherever you might be. Appreciate you being here with us. We are broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios, the friendly confines such as they are. Kurtz Polaris in Missoula and Sealy is celebrating their 30th birthday. I've been telling you about this all month long. Well, it's because it lasts only for a month, which ends, tomorrow. You need to get into Kurtz Polaris because for their 30th birthday, they're celebrating by offering you up to 30% off. That's right, 30% off MSRP on select parts and accessories with the purchase of any new Polaris off-road vehicle, Husqvarna and Beta dirt bike, or any Crest pontoon boat. Some restrictions apply. See Kurtz for details. Get into Kurtz Polaris today or tomorrow for this very, very big sale. Coulter, it is time for Name That Tune. We're doing this all week long and into next week. We're going to register you for a pair of tickets to go to see the B-52s on Thursday of next week at the Kettle House Amphitheater. We are also, just for playing along and getting the song and artist right, we're going to give you 4 tickets to an upcoming Osprey game. But we're going to do a little Name That Tune. Reese in the back there is going to play a snippet of a song for you. You name the artist, you name the song, you got the tickets to the Osprey game, and you will be one of 4 finalists to be pulled out of the hat. 25% chance to go to the B-52s at the Kettle House Amphitheater next week. Sound pretty good? Okay. Reese, let's go. What is our musical snippet today? Let's play it for the people. Here we go. Good. That's it. That's all they need. That's easy. 329-1899. 329-1899. I mean, that's, we want people to get it. Maybe is that a layup? It's maybe too much of a layup. I don't know. It's a good one, though. 329-18. Oh, you want your microphone on to talk? Okay.
We'll see.
329-1899.
Got a call.
329-1899. All right, let's go to the phones. We got a caller on the Name That Tune. Hello, identify yourself. What is your name? Hello? You're
Do we have
call disconnected?
The call is lost. Okay, 329-1899. Do you know the song that you just heard? 329-1899. They called in. Either the call dropped. I've been having phone issues today, by the way. Multiple calls going through. Can't hear who's on the other end. You think that's
We have a caller.
Okay, let's try this again. Patch him in. Hello, how are you? You got who is this?
I'm doing well. It's Chris.
Hi, Chris. We're doing great, Chris. We're doing great. Thanks for calling in. Chris, what is your feeling about the B-52s? You into it?
I could definitely be into the B-52s. I'll go back to the B-52s for sure.
Oh, now so you're a veteran of a B-52s.
No, I've never seen them, but I've never seen them, but I will take that trip back in time.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, back to the B-52s. I copy now. Yes, 1979 when their famous most notable record came out. 1979. Okay, Chris, you heard the song. Can you name that tune?
It's Faith, George Michael.
You got it. It was not the Limp Bizkit version. No.
Unfortunately, it wasn't. I would have been too excited to call in.
Yeah. Well, we can pass on that. That's fine. You are correct. It was George Michael or Wham. Is it Wham or George? I think it's George Michael.
I think it's
right?
George Michael.
Yeah.
I think.
Oh yeah, it's George Michael solo. Yeah, it was his first solo record after breaking off from Wham.
After being done with Wham.
Cool.
Okay. I've always said if you need to know anything about the Big Sky Conference or the history of George Michael, ask Coulter. That's the thing.
I figured.
So you've got it. You got yourself 4 tickets to an upcoming Osprey game, Chris, and we will be picking a name out of the hat, and your name will be in the hat on Tuesday of next week to go to the B-52s. I'm with you. Go to the B-52s concert. It's going to be fun to dance around, and also a very fine people-watching affair, it seems to me, right, at the B-52s.
It always is out there, isn't it? It's always a great place to watch our Missoulians out there.
To watch our Missoulians, indeed. Chris, give your information to Reese. We'll get you set up with all that. All right, man?
All right. Thanks, guys. Keep up the good work.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Now, listen, Coulter, I understand why this rule's in place. Okay? I understand why the powers that be that run the Kettle House Amphitheater said we are not having floating the Blackfoot terminating at the Kettle House and then in for the concert. I understand that there's 100 good reasons why that's a rule.
Yes, there are so many reasons. Gosh.
But I hate it.
Well,
all I want to do is go up to Johns Road, sit down at 9 a.m., and at about 6 p.m., hop out and walk into the B-52s in my skivs, you know?
I mean, you could just get out a little bit further down.
I mean,
just get out down by the old bridges down there, right past Milltown.
Yeah, you could. Have you done that? Have you ridden that portion and then the confluence into the Clark Fork there with the Blackfoot and the
I have.
Clark
I've
Fork?
done all the floats. I love it. One of the funniest moments of my college life was when I took half a dozen of my good friends from Southern California up to Thibodeau Falls.
Okay.
These guys are from the inner city. These guys, they've never been on the river. They don't know about, rapids, class 3. They don't, nothing. Thibodeau Falls, you can hear it in the distance. Mm-hmm. But you get in at Whitaker Bridge, and so you float for, probably a good 20, 30 minutes before you get up there. But you can hear it about 5 minutes before you go, but you can't see it. So we're floating. Troy Young, one of these guys, actually. He played for the Grizz. Back in the day, 2004 Big Sky Conference, 2003 Big Sky Conference
an
MVP.
Atlanta Hawk.
He was for a moment. Yeah, played in the CFL for a long time. Oh, right. You're talking about the basketball Troy Young. No. Troy Young played in the NFL for a moment, played in the CFL for a long time, very successful CFL career. But him and his brother, a couple of their other buddies. But my other buddy, Leroy, we're floating, and they're kind of nervous. Like, what's going on here? And then you could hear the falls in the distance. And Leroy's like, no, man, I don't know. What are we? He's taking me down the Thunderdome. It's like, what's the Thunderdome? I was like, it's called Thibodeau Falls. He's like, the Thunderdome. He's like, my mama's going to kill me, man. He's like, I can't swim. He's like, I'm going to die. And we're like, dude, it's all good. You're going to be just fine.
It's not all good if you can't swim, Coulter. It really isn't all
So
good.
they start trying to paddle up the river to get away from it. I was like, boys, right here, it's like 3 feet deep. I was like, just get off. They all flop off the tubes. Nope, not doing it. Walk to the shore, walk past the rapids, get back in, start over. They're like, you're not doing it. We're not going down Thunderdome. It's so funny.
Here's what I would like to know. I would like to crowdsource the answer to this. I have children, 3 children. My oldest child is 6. She is I would call her a very middle-of-the-road swimmer. She's marginally capable of it. She certainly is still wearing a life jacket. She's not, but she's been in water, spent a fair amount of time in the water. And so, what is the age at which you can, with a life jacket on, in good faith and in safety, put your child on an inner tube in a normal, regular part of the river and float down it with them? Okay, that's what I want to know from you, at Gus Tootell on Twitter. If you want to call in and tell us, that's fine as well. Share it on Facebook. I would like to know, because these are the things I have no feel for. This is how you break ground as the oldest child. I was an oldest child, Coulter. You're an oldest child. There's a lot of things that you find out after you become a parent. You're like, oh, you had no clue, and you were experimenting on me as to whether this was going to work out or not. I want to be very safe. I want to do this the right way, but I would like to know what age a child can be before you figure it's safe for them to be on the river in a life jacket, in an inner tube with your parent. Notably, let's imagine that it's a competent parent and not me. Okay? Hour number 2 next.
Welcome to today's lottery drawing. And today's winning numbers are not yours, not yours, and another number that's not yours. And the final number is not yours.
When it comes to having money, don't rely on luck. Brew your own coffee at home instead of buying that latte. Brown bag it to work instead of ordering it. Go to feedthepig.org for more free ideas on how to save. Feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes too. Book online at CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today. 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
We ate a lot of steaks before we came up with the Montana Club's Private Reserve Cut Angus. It's as good a steak as you're going to get. Our Private Reserve Cut Angus is specially cut for us. And with our custom seasoning, it has a flavor that's absolutely incomparable. We're confident that it will satisfy the most discriminating steak customer for an unrivaled steak experience. Real Montana, real food. The Montana Club on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
Hey folks, Ryan Tootell here, and I'm with Josh from the Advocates Injury Attorneys. Josh, if our listeners have been injured in an accident, how can you help?
We're here to help you after a car accident by negotiating with insurance companies, recovering lost wages if you have any, and even getting you into a rental car if you need one. Call us today for a free consultation, and we'll get started helping you right away.
If you need help, get a hold of the Advocates. Call Josh at 640-4444 or online at montanaadvocates.com. You deserve an advocate.
Hey, it's Tootell and Nuanez. If you know anything about our show, you know that we love music almost as much as we love sports. And we love giving stuff away.
That's right, and that's why we're sending you to the B-52s. The B-52s are coming to the Kettle House Amphitheater Thursday night, August 8th, and we've got a pair of tickets to give away. Coulter, how are we going to do it?
All next week, we'll have a Name That Tune contest. All you need to do is give us a call and name the tune.
Pretty simple. Log Jam presents the B-52s at Kettle House Amphitheater Thursday, August 8th. Win tickets with Tootell and Nuanez all next week.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana, KKVU HD3 Stevensville, and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, Ryan Tootell, Coach Nuanez. There's some sports news for you. In a reversal of trends from the past 2 summers, the Bozeman Bucks are surging at the Montana-Alberta American Legion Class AA tournament this weekend. Monday, the Bucks posted a 10-0 Mercy Rule victory over the Billings Royals in the undefeated semifinal game at Deller Park in Billings. The second-seeded Bucks were the number 1 seed each of the last 2 seasons, only to fall short of the elusive state title. Now, Bozeman will face number 1 Missoula, a 3-0 victor over the Billings Scarlets earlier Monday. Number 4 Lethbridge knocked out number 6 Helena 4-1 in a loser-out game also on Monday. The Elks will take on the Royals. They're playing right now while the Mavs and Bucks begin at 7 o'clock.
Longtime Missoula Loyola golf coach Julia Jones is the newest inductee to the Montana State Golf Association Hall of Fame. Jones was the head coach at Loyola from 2000 until 2010 before shifting into an assistant role. 2014, she took over once again as the head coach and then relinquished that role again to Mike Trudanowski a couple years back. Loyola has claimed 3 Class B state titles as a team. The last 2 decades, she also helped coach many individual medalists in both boys and girls golf.
Joey Moore of Billings is the Montana State men's amateur golf champion after he shot a 14 under over the first 2 days. He went 6 over the third day, but still won by 3.
This ESPN Missoula Sports Center is brought to you by Aspen Sound.
Talk sweet talk, I got a knocking in my knees and a wobble in my walk, and I'm trembling. That's right, you got me.
Live update for you from the Class AA State Legion Baseball Tournament in Billings. In the top of the 5th, the Billings Royals lead the Lethbridge Elks 4-2 in loser-out action. Missoula tries to stay alive. The Missoula Mavs try to stay alive against the Bozeman Bucks tonight. That's a loser-out for Missoula and a could be or it could be into the state championship game for the Bozeman Bucks. So just 4 teams left now at the Class AA State Tournament in Billings. Interesting stat.
Thank you, Coulter.
Either Billings, the Billings Royals, the Billings Scarlets, or the Missoula Mavs have won every single state title since 2007. Bozeman, the last non-Missoula or Billings team to win the State Legion Championship.
How about that? It's time to play a little game called Does Coulter Know Everything or Only Most Everything? This is the NFL head coaching edition. Now, Coulter, you got to shut your laptop. Okay? Got to have it down. It's Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, hour number 2, broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy. They have been in business 30 years, and they are now celebrating by offering you up to 30% off. That's right, 30% off MSRP on select parts and accessories with the purchase of any new Polaris off-road vehicle, Husqvarna and Beta dirt bike, or any Crest pontoon boat. Some restrictions apply. See Kurtz for details. Get to Kurtz Polaris today and tomorrow, for the month is over, for their 30-year anniversary sale. Coulter, here's what we're going to do. I have a list. This is not an exhaustive list. We're not going through all 32 teams. I think you know who the New England Patriots head coach is. I feel confident enough in your skills there that I'm not going to quiz you on this.
Okay.
But what I did want to do is go through. Some of these are first-year head coaches. Some of these are second-year head coaches. Some of these are second tenured coaches, etc. But I wanted to go around the NFL with you, and I think I got, a dozen, maybe 14 here. And I put the over-under at 7. I think you can do better than that. Okay. But I bet there's 5 that you can't get.
I will be interested to see, because just off the top of my...
What do you think?
When you first prompted this, I thought, I bet you I could get 20 out of 30. Because there's a lot of new coaches that are guys that have almost... The thing that's so interesting, though, is it's not like, Wade Phillips or Norv Turner or some of these other guys that have been head coaches before and are going to be head coaches again, and like Jim Schwartz and guys like that have just...
a lot of first-timers.
There's a bunch of guys that...
Sean McVay way.
Trying to... there was a coach that we broke down yesterday. Who was it? But he had never even been a coordinator. He'd never even been a play caller when we were breaking down what his path to his job was. So I think that's a unique thing that's going on in the NFL right now.
Well, let's do this. I'll put it at 7. Okay? Because if there's 10, let's put it like this. There's 10 that you know for sure. So out of the other 20 teams, we'll see if you okay.
Hit me with it. Hit me with it.
So here's what we're going to do, though. I mean, we got to put some on this.
Okay. I already owe you a beer.
Do you?
For your rally in Spokane, even though I won the stroke play, you in fact won the game of Wolf.
No, you paid me. You paid me off that night.
I did. That's right.
Oh.
See, that's what I get for not even drinking that night.
No, but here's the thing is, I mean, you got to understand the level of honesty that I just demonstrated where I could have been another
Did I
beer
actually,
ahead.
though? Because you came to the bar and then you left and then...
You did pay me off that night.
Okay.
You and our good buddy Sean Rainey both have made good.
Okay.
So
I guess I don't owe you.
We're even. You don't owe me anything.
No, you still need to light that Aaron Rodgers hoodie on fire,
So the number
though.
is 7.
Okay.
If you get 7 wrong, it's a push.
Okay.
If you get 6 or less wrong, you win, and you get to punch me in the stomach. If I
don't want to do that.
Just kidding. I just thought it would be fun to do the punch thing.
Not for you.
No. But if I get 8 or more, then I get to punch you. See, that's the deal. No, we're not doing any physical violence around here. We'll figure it out.
I'm so zen.
How about one beer? How about this? A beer for every, like, if you only miss 4.
Right, if I clear it, okay, yes.
Now you get, now
so
I
I can earn up to 7 beers.
You could earn up to 7.
But if I bomb, then what do I owe you? On the other sliding.
I think it should be 6, really, not 7.
Okay, 6 up to a 6-pack.
You can win up to a 6-pack,
or lose up to a 6-pack,
or lose up to a 6-pack. Okay, good.
Okay.
This is how you do it on the fly. This was supposed to happen in prep before the show, but clearly we're doing this now for everybody. Okay, here we go. Going to start off with some that I think you should be able to get.
Okay.
The Detroit Lions.
Matt Patricia, former defensive coordinator for the New England Patriots.
You got it. The Chicago Bears.
Matt Nagy.
Give me this pen.
I'm making a good and bad. Got a G and B column, so I'm 2 for 2.
Okay.
Matt Nagy.
Okay. Let's go. The New York Football Jets. Oh, Coulter, this feels like Coulter.
Adam Gase.
Okay. I mean, we just talked about.
We just talked about him. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. Let's take it up a level. Wait, I need your pen. Here's the thing. It matters how many I even ask you about.
True.
Right? So I'm not going in order on my sheet, so I need to make sure that I get all the ones that I've asked. Okay. The Los Angeles Chargers.
Anthony Lynn.
He's been there a while.
I like Anthony Lynn, and I watched the Chargers. I don't know. This is such a strange evolution in my life. Because I used to hate the Chargers because I hated Phillip Rivers so much.
Mm-hmm.
And the Chargers just like the regular season just dominant team that just never did it in the playoffs. It just was.
They were Norv Turner.
They were.
And now they're Anthony Lynn, and they're pretty formidable.
Pretty formidable for sure. I like Anthony Lynn. I think Anthony Lynn is a let's just say I have a lot easier time seeing how players respect Anthony Lynn than a lot of other coaches in the league. Adam Gase and Anthony Lynn are from different sides of the spectrum in this argument or in this discussion.
No argument. The Green Bay Packers.
Your boy, Matt LaFleur.
First of all, he's not my boy. They're my team. He very well might not be my boy.
Total tangent.
Matt LaFleur.
I heard a guy who I feel so dumb for being a writer who cannot remember another writer's name, but he is the guy who covers the Packers for The Athletic. And he said that he was on Ryan Russillo's podcast, and he said that it is beyond comprehension the toxicity that existed between Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers last year. And he said that Aaron Rodgers, there's a new analytic, percentage of balls thrown away. And Aaron Rodgers shattered the NFL record for the percentage of balls thrown away by almost 300%. Aaron Rodgers had close to 100 thrown away passes last year where he just, did the Aaron Rodgers, where he spiked it in the dirt, just threw it in the stands. But this writer said that this was not just Aaron Rodgers making a smart or poor decision with the football. This was Aaron Rodgers saying,
bad play call.
Bad play call, Mike McCarthy. The whole thing didn't develop. They didn't run it right and chucked it in the stands. Hearing someone that's on the inside of that locker room describe that, it made me take a step back from all the criticism I've had of Aaron Rodgers and his poor body language. That stuff drove me nuts last year. Him sulking on the sidelines, yelling at his teammates, always pouting, always acting like a baby. But if it really was a toxic relationship that had just festered, I think the Packers, straight up, without getting any better personnel-wise, could take a huge jump. Just if Aaron Rodgers just doesn't throw the ball in the stands 50 times, you're talking about maybe 10 more touchdown passes. I got 5, right?
Let's hope so. Yeah, but it doesn't matter how many you get.
It just matters how many I get wrong. Okay. Keep rolling.
Okay. The Miami Dolphins.
I only know this because we just talked about this yesterday. Brian Flores.
It is Brian Flores. I was hoping you wouldn't.
He was the one that was who I just had forgot 2 seconds ago. He was a linebackers coach for New England.
Cincinnati Bengals. TikTok.
He's a Sean McVay guy.
TikTok.
Zach Taylor.
Oh no. I mean, I'm going to owe you. I mean, the fact that you picked up Zach Taylor from the Bengals is that's disgusting that you know that. I mean, I'm screwed. Denver.
Vic Fangio.
San Francisco.
Kyle Shanahan.
Indianapolis.
Frank Reich.
Cleveland.
Oh man. Freddie Kitchens.
Arizona.
Cliff Kingsbury.
Jacksonville.
Doug Marrone.
Tennessee.
Mike Vrabel.
The New York Football Giants.
You already said that. Adam Gase.
No.
Oh, Giants. He used to be the offensive coordinator for the Vikings. Pat Shurmur.
The Buffalo Bills.
Doug McDermott.
No, I owe you 6. I hate this.
That was your Burn Street Bistro Burn of the Week.
Coulter burned me on the Burn Street Bistro Burn of the Week by running the table. When you're like, I could probably get 20 out of 30. You were going to get 32 out of 32. Those are all the hardest ones. Name one that you don't know. Because everybody else is pretty known.
Who's the coach of the Falcons? I never can remember. Dan Quinn? Is that right? Okay. Is Ron Rivera still the head coach in Carolina?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Obviously, Sean Payton.
So this is the other
Bruce Arians is in Tampa Bay.
See the Tampa.
Mike Tomlin is in Pittsburgh. That's easy.
Doug Peterson's already won a Super Bowl.
The Dallas Cowboys don't have a head coach. They just have a pawn.
Team.
Yeah, Mike Zimmer.
Here's what I want to do though. In addition to this,
Sean McVay.
So we went through
Carroll.
all these names. I also want to know who was your list for top 5 coaches in the NFL. We can both put Bill Belichick at 1, I presume, and start from there. My list is, I wouldn't say that it's exhaustive. What I would say is I've got my list, but I haven't gone through and put down, 1 through 5 who I got. But I will tell you who's on my list. Bill Belichick.
Yep.
Sean Payton.
Yep.
A lot of people may not like it, but Mike Tomlin is on my list.
It's a huge year for Mike Tomlin because I think Mike Tomlin would have been on everyone's list for about a decade, and the first real cracks in his reputation have come the last couple of years. But you wonder, I was thinking about this the other day. Of all the teams in the NFL, the Steelers are the team that has been immune to prima donna superstars almost across the board for decades. And then they just had 2 of the biggest prima donna superstars in the whole league in Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown.
Well, it's not clear they still don't have one.
Well, no doubt.
Right?
He might be the biggest one out of all of them. I mean, he might be the biggest prima donna in the entire league. Mm-hmm. Ben Roethlisberger might. But it's just like the Mike McCarthy, Aaron Rodgers deal where this is like what we were talking about last week. We were breaking down the league as a whole. The talent you have on your roster is not going to be that disparate when you're talking about a salary cap league. There's so many. There's truly only like 5 teams in the league where you look at the roster, you're like, yeah, that team has no chance to make the playoffs. You could truly talk me into so many different teams.
Yep.
And the difference between, the Tennessee Titans and the Carolina Panthers and the Dallas Cowboys is not that much.
Right.
So much of it is the locker room. How much do you guys get along? Because, when you're talking about one dude who's running down on kickoff and has an equal chance of getting a concussion as this dude's making $380,000 a year, and this dude over here is making $25 million a year. Toxic locker rooms can just completely derail NFL seasons.
Yeah. So I got Mike Tomlin, Sean Payton, Bill Belichick. I do need to do 6. I got John Harbaugh, I think, is on this list for me. He's sort of on the edge. But 2 other guys who I don't know if anybody's going to agree with, but I think I can make a very good case for both of them. Pete Carroll.
Yep.
And Bruce Arians. I think Bruce Arians, he hasn't been a head coach for all that long, 5 years in Arizona before he retired, but is now back in Tampa. But the way he conducts himself, there's some guys who should just be at the top. And the idea that he got the moniker of great coordinator, never going to be a great head coach is utterly insane. Like that is what he that's the spot he landed on for 20 years.
Being an NFL head coach, too, it has so many parallels to politics because like Bruce Arians is such a real, authentic guy that it's honestly held him back in his career.
Right.
And that's not just unique to football. That's a lot of different industries. If you're a heart on your sleeve, honest, blunt, oftentimes people perceive you as abrasive, and it can delay your career progression.
I think Bruce Arians is good to get. So I gave 6. I don't know which of those to take off the list to give you my top 5. It might be Harbaugh, even though he's accomplished more than both Pete Carroll and Bruce Arians. But I think those guys have been able to, both get the most out of the talent that they've had, but also had the most vision about how to put teams together. I think Pete Carroll's great skill is not so much as a football coach. It's about how, from a scheme and attitude standpoint, along with John Schneider, to put a football team together, even though it's at an NFL level. You've said this all the time. It's a college
type
atmosphere,
of culture, yeah.
At the professional level. But you can't just do that. It can't just be USC North, and so to be able to do the professional thing. And look, Pete Carroll, when he was a head coach at New England, was a pretty middle of the road NFL coach, and when he came back to Seattle, people were like, "Really? He can't do it at this level." That thing is pretty much gone now, which I'm happy about. Like, oh well, if you couldn't coach, you think that Nick Saban wouldn't do well as an NFL football coach if he was to go to the NFL because he was mediocre at Miami? Stop.
And there's so many things that people forget to remember.
Like it was Miami?
Well, and like they went all in on Drew Brees, and then Drew Brees tore his shoulder, and then you had to roll Chad Pennington. That's like Chad Pennington's a fine quarterback. It's a huge drop off when you expect to have Drew Brees.
Yeah. So anyway, those to me are I think they're a cut above. There's a lot. Now there's a lot of guys. I think Doug Peterson is a guy I love. Frank Reich. Sadly, because I'm not a Colts guy, I love Frank Reich as head coach.
Too.
So I think that I think there are some outstanding guys, but you can't be, even with a Super Bowl victory, you can't be a 2 or 3 year head coach or less, obviously, and be on the list of best coaches in the NFL, it seems to me. A lot of people could and should rightfully probably point out Andy Reid. I think Andy Reid has obviously, the tenure he's got more tenure than anybody almost, right? In terms of total years as a head coach, I'm not even sure that Belichick's got him on that. Maybe. But it's awful close. So Andy Reid is obviously there, and, the Super Bowl thing is kind of what it is. 4 straight NFC championship games is pretty tough to argue with, and obviously what he's doing in Kansas City as well. And I think that, if he continues, I think Andy Reid will probably break through. He's got. Let's put it like this: if it doesn't happen with him and Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City right now, that's going to be a tough one to live down for Andy Reid because of how good it looks like they are and should be on paper. But he's obviously also a great coach and certainly in the conversation.
Per the Chiefs portion of this conversation, Patrick Mahomes was essentially in his rookie year last year, only his second year in the NFL. His first year as a starter. I still think that the window there in Kansas City is only about 2 or 3 more years. Only because when Patrick Mahomes hits the open market, he will break the bank for whoever signs him because he will be the highest paid player in NFL history.
But again, that's just inconsequential.
But it's not when I just think you have to win when you have the guy under his rookie contract because you can put so much more talent around him.
Yeah, you can.
I mean, Dan Marino set the NFL single season record for touchdown passes in a season his second year. The Miami Dolphins went to the Super Bowl that year. They did not go back.
But there wasn't even this whole rookie count.
No, I know. I'm just saying when you have your window, you have to capitalize on your window because there is very few teams in pro sports history, very few franchises that have windows that reopen, that have times where you win a championship in 1999 when you're the San Antonio Spurs, and then you win one 8 or 9 years later with the similar pieces, where you're the New England Patriots and you win Super Bowls nearly, almost 2 decades apart. It just doesn't happen. Most teams' windows is 2 to 3 years long.
I think that most teams' windows, I think that often teams' windows are 2 to 3 years long, like you said, but I think that's also poor on the part of the teams.
Will the Seattle Seahawks ever win another Super Bowl with Russell Wilson in this core?
Yes.
They will win one.
With this core, there is no
with
core
Russell
anymore.
Wilson and Pete Carroll, the faces of the franchise. Will they win another Super Bowl?
I think they will.
Really?
Yes, I do.
Will Aaron Rodgers win another Super Bowl?
I'm going to be optimistic and say yes.
That's why I'm so mad about Kirk Cousins. Because the Vikings' window is right now. They had a better chance to win a Super Bowl with Case Keenum. They had a better chance to win a Super Bowl with so many dudes.
The better chance with Case Keenum is still 0.
See, I don't think so. I think you can win a Super Bowl with their team.
I mean, I get what you're saying, and that's fine. But here's all
if they just screw around with
all I'm saying about the window is this: is there a window for the Ravens? Is there a window for the Steelers? Is there a window for the Patriots? No. It's win forever. Pete Carroll wrote the book, for crying out loud. Win forever.
That's true.
There's no windows when you do it right.
But to contrast that, like a team like the Rams, look at the team. Look at the young stars that they have on that team. Their window is now. It is 2 or 3 years because people are going to figure out Sean McVay's offense. People are going to figure out Jared Goff, and to your point, likely exploit him. I heard such a great stat last night on my drive home on Spain and Company. Sarah Spain said that 2 stats. First, there's a new analytic that shows the average yards that the offensive line blows the other defensive line off the ball, the average point of contact that a running back makes. The Rams averaged 5.7 yards per blast off, call it, last year. So basically, Todd Gurley's carrying the ball for a full 3.5 yards before any defender is closing down upon him because the line of scrimmage is moving almost 5 yards every time. Mm-hmm. I talked about all last season. That's a true testament to the improvements that Rams offensive line made. The other thing was that Jared Goff, 55% of the passes Jared Goff completed came off play action, which is why when Todd Gurley's not in the game in the Super Bowl, Jared Goff goes from potential MVP to a guy who looks like he has no business being in the game.
Totally.
And so there's a distinct possibility that people will figure out Sean McVay's offense. Todd Gurley's health is going to be in question for the rest of his career. He's had multiple ACL surgeries. He's got bone on bone in his knee. How is he going to last? No one is Superman. Guys like him, they seem to always have short windows. Who knows, man? But I just think that the Rams' window is small too because everybody's window is small. This ebbs and flows so much.
It does, but that's the thing is like, if you ask me about Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson could very well still be the productive Pro Bowl caliber quarterback of the Seattle Seahawks in 10 years from now. And he's already been there 5 or 6. Okay?
More like 8 or 9, right?
The last player that Tom Brady played with his rookie year retired from football a decade ago. I mean, these guys, they play with dudes that were born barely when he came into the league. Okay? So, people talk about, when you talk about quarterback and coach, okay, the window is decade plus long.
If you keep the same continuity. But so often in pro sports, there's so much volatility. Think about how revered and how much hype there is surrounding Sean McVay right now. If the Rams were to fall on their face and not make it back to the Super Bowl at any point, say the Rams do not make the Super Bowl for the next 4 years straight and say they miss the playoffs in any of those 4 seasons, Sean McVay will 100% be on the hot seat. Because that's how the league works. There's only a couple jobs that you can get in the league where you're not on the hot seat. Bill Belichick has one. Mike Tomlin has one. John Harbaugh, at least for now, has one.
Well, I mean, they're obviously not on the hot seat because even if you get fired after 14 years, I mean, you can call it a hot seat or whatever, but if you've been there more than 5 or 6 years, you're established and you're solid, and it can work. And normally it does work. I mean, we saw it with the Giants. We've seen it with Pittsburgh. We've seen it in Baltimore. We've seen it in New England. We didn't see it in Cincinnati, where they tried to do the right thing but didn't have the right people. And so you got to make that call as well, and that's why there is so much turnover if you feel like it's not the right thing. Here's the thing to me, though, about Sean McVay. You said people are going to figure out his schemes. Well, no. I mean, why hasn't anybody figured out Belichick's schemes? Because he evolves just as much, if not more, than anybody, and he's smart. And so McVay, you know what the Super Bowl was for him? School. It was a lesson. This is what, I mean, guaranteed that he's not a worse coach for having had a noogie rubbed in his head by Bill Belichick in the Super Bowl. He is better for it. Now, winning a Super Bowl, I mean, if that's the litmus test, which it is to an extent, but I mean, only one team's going to do it.
Totally.
You know, and so are all of a sudden, like, is your window an utter failure if you're the Rams and you make it to 3 NFC championship games and 1 Super Bowl that you lose while Goff's on his rookie contract? Absolutely not. One of the dominant teams in the NFL. And once Goff is off his rookie contract and makes all that money and you got to reshuffle stuff around, that's going to be the true test of management and of coaching. But if you're good, you can do it. And other teams have done it. So the window thing is accentuated because of the price of a quarterback and the rookie, CBA agreement, which, by the way, could all be completely changed in 2 years because the new CBA is going to have to get worked out, and I don't know what that's going to look like. But I don't. The window that you speak of is real, but I think it's real because teams don't do it well. That's what I think. I think teams that do it well, there is no window.
Right. But nothing lasts forever. And we've seen, I mean, the New York Giants were on the Mount Rushmore of stable organizations in the NFL for 3 decades. And then they're just not.
When Brady's done, will the Patriots with Bill Belichick be the favorites in the preseason to win the AFC East?
Yes.
That's all you need to know.
Alpine Touch makes the perfect gift this summer or any time of year. If you are traveling, bring a gift that is distinctly Montana and give your loved ones some of the best spices anywhere around. From the Alpine Touch Pick 4 Spice Pack to the All-Purpose Twin Pack to the mouth-watering sunflower shoots to Alpine Touch gift cards. Alpine Touch makes the perfect Montana present. Available at retail locations around the state or online for a limited time. Use the code ESPN10 at checkout to get 10% off any online order. Alpine Touch, Montana's special spice.
Les Schwab is proud to introduce 2 of our best tires ever, just in time for summer. There's our exclusive Reputation, a high-mileage premium passenger tire we believe has the quietest, most comfortable ride ever. Or our exceptionally quiet and smooth all-season traction tire, the Open Range AT. Get up to $150 instant rebate on 4 backcountry MT or AT tires or $50 on 4 road control passenger tires. Les Schwab Tires. Doing the right thing matters. Cannot be combined with other offers. Limited time. Terms and conditions apply. Details at leschwab.com.
On Russell, across from the fairgrounds.
In Western Montana, we know shopping local matters. And you may think you'd pay more for the quality and customer service that comes with it, but not at Selway Armory. Selway Armory is locally owned with knowledgeable specialists that can answer your questions. In addition to the expertise, though, Selway Armory also has a bigger selection and lower prices than the box stores. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with the experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit E6, and online at selwayarmory.com.
Hey there, Colter Nuanez from Tootell, Nuanez 1029 ESPN Missoula, here with Tom from Aspen Sound. Tom got me a great deal on an automatic car starter this winter. Now it's summer. What sort of stuff you guys got going on down there, Tom?
Well, Colter, coming into the summertime, we're picking up on the window tinting front. So if you need your windows tinted, give us a call. We'll get you scheduled up. Boats and ATVs are starting to come in full swing, and we're also starting to see the hot rods come out to play. Anything audio related, let us know. We'll get you taken care of.
Feel the music at Aspen Sound.
Take summer by storm with a new Polaris off-road vehicle. During the summer sales event, rebates go as high as $2,000 and financing is as low as 3.99%. Live your life wide open in a high-performance RZR. Tackle anything from mountains to mud holes on our legendary Sportsman ATV. Get more done with a hard-working Ranger or take on any task or trail in a versatile Polaris General. Whatever you're looking for, now is the time to take your pick from the off-road's best-selling lineup. See Polaris.com or your Polaris dealer for rebates up to $2,000 and financing as low as 3.99% APR for 36 months during the Polaris Summer Sales Event at Kurtz Polaris, 2904 West Broadway in Missoula and Highway 83 in Sealy. July is Kurtz Polaris' 30th birthday, and they are celebrating with unprecedented savings on select parts and accessories with the purchase of a new Polaris off-road vehicle, Beta or Husqvarna dirt bike, or any of their new line of Crest pontoon boats. Go to Kurtz Polaris for details. Offers valid in U.S. on new 2015 through 2019 vehicles. Subject to credit approval. Offers vary by model. See dealer for details. Always wear a helmet, never drink and ride.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, Ryan Tootell, Colton Nuanez. Here's some sports news for you. In a reversal of trends from the past 2 summers, the Bozeman Bucks are surging at the Montana-Alberta American Legion Class AA tournament this week. Monday, the Bucks posted a 10-0 Mercy Rule victory over the Billings Royals in the undefeated semifinal game at Deller Park in Billings. The second-seeded Bucks were the number 1 seed each of the last 2 seasons, only to fall short of the elusive state title. Now, Bozeman will face the number 1 seed Missoula, who was a 3-0 winner over the Billings Scarlets earlier yesterday. The number 4 Lethbridge Elks knocked off number 6 Helena 4-1 in a loser-out game. The Elks are now taking on the Royals right now and will be followed by the Mavs and Bucks at 7.
4-2, the Royals lead Lethbridge. Latest update there. Longtime Missoula Loyola golf coach Julia Jones is the newest inductee to the Montana State Golf Association Hall of Fame. Jones was the head coach at Loyola from 2000 until 2010 before shifting into an assistant role. 2014, she took over once again as the head coach. Loyola has claimed 3 Class B golf titles over the last 2 decades, and Jones helped mentor a variety of state champions individually.
Joey Moore of Billings is the Montana Men's State Amateur Golf Champion after a red-hot first 2 rounds that saw him get to 14 under. He finished with a 6 over 78 on the 3rd day, but still beat defending champion Riggs Johnson by 3.
This ESPN Missoula Sports Center is brought to you by Aspen Sound.
Who are the dark horses in the Big Sky Conference? Are there any? Open question. It's Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy. And online at kurtzpolaris.com. They're celebrating 30 years in business this month. Notably, the month is almost over. You got today and tomorrow to go in and celebrate with them by getting, are you ready? 30% off. That's right, 30% off MSRP on select parts and accessories for the purchase of any new Polaris off-road vehicle, Husqvarna and Beta dirt bike, or any Crest pontoon boat. Some restrictions apply. See Kurtz for details. Get to Kurtz Polaris for Kurt's 30-year anniversary sale. If you missed anything in the show thus far, you got it on the podcast. Podcast available on TuneIn Radio app, Spotify, and all the places, all the platforms that you get your podcast. You get the Tootell Nuanez podcast there as well. It is there thanks to the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. If you want to call, 329-1899 is the phone number. All guests join us via the Rangich Brothers RV phone line. Coulter, we've got our pretty definitive top 5 in the Big Sky Conference football. Is there another team or two that could make some noise in the conference, perhaps be, an at-large playoff team? Let's put it like this. It would be shocking to me if any team not named Weber, UC Davis, Eastern, Montana, or Montana State won the Big Sky Conference. Okay? Shocking. However, if you're talking about a 24-team tournament, I think there is some room to talk about some teams that certainly could get a look at being a postseason type of team. I think the team I look at most notably on something like that would be Northern Arizona. Mm-hmm. They have a new coach. Mm-hmm. If he's great, then they're in business. And they have a quarterback who, if he can stay healthy, we think is great in Case Cookus, and a built-in leader, a 6th-year, senior there. And, at that obviously very key position, one of the top, couple of quarterbacks in the Big Sky Conference. And so NAU looks like a team to me that if you just want to, take it at that level. Now, what else do they have depth-wise and everything else? I don't know. But I think there's some possibility, some upside to Northern Arizona. There's a couple other teams, too, though. I mean, Idaho State was a breakout team, and if Rob Fennessy continues going the way that he's been going in Pocatello, maybe they're a team that, takes another step forward, even though they lose one of the Guller brothers, which is significant. So I don't know. You tell me, what do you think?
Well, first of all, I think that on the Idaho State note, while I do think Rob Fennessy is the right guy for that job, and I do think that they have made not just incremental, they've made very, very big strides.
Very big.
I mean, they're 11-11.
Progress.
They're 11-11 in the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
At Idaho State, that is a huge accomplishment. There has not been anybody that's been 500 in a 2-year period, and that's even counting Mike Kramer, who went 8-4 1 year.
And they also beat down the Vandals.
They beat down the Vandals. I mean, they won an FBS game 2 years ago. They went to Nevada and won 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But also, there's a lot of the Mike Kramer recruits, because make no mistake, Mike Kramer got a ton of talent into that program. Way better talent than they had before, including especially on the lines.
Yeah.
They've had some legitimate defensive linemen, Tyler Cooter, John Raheem Peoples. Those guys are studs. Mario Jenkins, one of the stud linebackers in the league. You talk about James Madison and the running back, as well as, you mentioned Tanner Guller, their quarterback last year. The system that they're going to run offensively, the RPO system, you need to have a veteran stud quarterback. They had one last year. That's why they went 6-5. That's why they won 5 league games. They still have 2 of the 5 best receivers in the league in Mitch Guller and Mikey Dean. They still have a top 5 running back in Ty Flanagan, but they lose a lot, and they don't have the guy at quarterback. I don't think they have an answer at quarterback. So because of that, there's no way you could talk me into, and this is the first time I've said this about the Big Sky in several years, because I always think that almost anybody could be good. There's no way you could talk me into Idaho State, Northern Colorado, Southern Utah, or Idaho being good this year. Nothing. There's nothing you could tell me that could convince me that those.
And so who does that leave?
Those 4 teams could be any good. I also think that Cal Poly has had a nationally elite player to be the head of the snake of their triple option offense for the last 6 years. First, it was Chris Brown, the greatest triple option quarterback I've ever seen. Unbelievably tough. I mean, Chris Brown was carrying the ball 30 times a game. He would get worn out by the end of the year, which was unfortunate, but he is a stud. I mean, Chris Brown's performance against Montana, when Montana had Brock Coyle and Jordan Tripp playing linebacker, and Chris Brown rushed for 238 yards, the most ever by a Big Sky Conference quarterback, one of the greatest performances ever. I mean, the guy was a savage in that game. And then you have the linchpin, the leader of your offense, be the greatest fullback in Big Sky Conference history, Joe Prothro, one of the all-time leading rushers. I mean, Cal Poly's all-time leading rusher and one of the all-time leading rushers in the history of the league. They don't have an identity. And so I don't really know how – I mean, they've slipped significantly the last couple of years on defense. I think everybody in the league knows how to exploit that color, the color line scheme twists that Cal Poly does. That said, I still expect Cal Poly to win a couple games because – the turnaround when you play Cal Poly or after you play Cal Poly, it has such an impact on everybody else in the league. Because if you go, say you have to play at Eastern Washington and then you got to play Cal Poly the next week, there is no carryover for your prep. Mm-hmm. Say you got to play at Cal Poly one week and then you play UC Davis the next week. That's even worse because now you've just been getting banged up for a week and a half trying to prepare for the triple option, then playing it. How do you go cover UC Davis's spread offense? I'm not sure. So even though I don't think Cal Poly is going to be great, I do think that Tim Walsh is a good enough coach and instills toughness well enough that Cal Poly will win a few league games, which then to me leaves only 3 teams that are in the dark horse category. I think NAU is one. You broke that down well. I think when you have an elite talent at quarterback like Northern Arizona has with Case Cookus, you have a chance, period. I think that Northern Arizona has largely underachieved. And the fact that Northern Arizona only went to the playoffs 4 times in Jerome Sauer's 22 seasons, I think that it should have been more.
Yeah.
I think it should have been more. But I do think that NAU's right there. And then the other 2 teams, the first is Portland State, only because I think that Portland State plays Idaho State, Northern Colorado, Southern Utah, and Idaho for their first 4 conference games. They should and could win all of those games. Mm-hmm. Then Montana comes to Portland. Like we said, we'd probably both take Montana in that game, but Bruce Barnum has beat the Grizz multiple times, and Bruce Barnum, he sells that to his guys. It's not, oh, this is just another game. He sells them, hey, the big boys in the league, Montana State, they're coming to town. He talks about it on the record. He's talked about it on this show, how much he sells that. So I do think that Portland State could be maybe a middle-of-the-league team. They were competitive last year. I mean, shoot, they came to Missoula and they won a game.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Portland State could be there. But then to me, outside Northern Arizona, the biggest mystery in the league, and I think maybe the biggest delineation of what I think a team could be, is Sacramento State. Because Sacramento State was good 2 years ago. They were 7-4. They missed a couple of the quote-unquote flagship teams in the league with their schedule, but they still were competitive. Seven overall wins. They won 6 league games. Kevin Thompson was really good. Elijah Dotson was really good. They always have great speed at wide receivers because of their recruiting base. George Obina is back for his 6th year after tearing his shoulder last year. Darren Choates is back. Dre Terrell is back. Manoah Pearson's back. They have guys that are multiple year starters on both sides of the ball. And Jody Sears is a great guy. He's always been great to me. He's not a head coach. He never should have been. He basically inherited 2 different head coaching jobs because of the circumstances around him. He was an interim head coach because of a fired guy that he went to work for at both Weber State and Sac State. Jody Sears is a defensive coordinator. He didn't have the offensive mindset to really operate the way that they needed. And I think the fact that they cleaned house and they hired a guy that has such offensive acumen like Troy Taylor. I mean, we've seen from Steve Mushagian through Marshall Spurbeck through Jody Sears, it's sort of ironic because we've seen defensive-minded head coaches as the head coach at Sac State. To me, when you're talking about recruiting that Central Valley, I would just go straight spread. All gas, no brakes, throw it 100 times, try to score 1 million. Like, for real. Because you could get so many athletes, right? That what are you trying to play defense for? All these guys, both on offense and defense, are playing 7-on-7. Just get the best athletes you can on the perimeter on both sides of the ball. Try to just get picks on defense and just all gas, no brakes on offense. Troy Taylor has that mindset. Now the question is, can they surround Kevin Thompson with the dudes? But to me, Sac State, if they went out and won 4 league games in Troy Taylor's first season, wouldn't surprise me. If they went out and went over, it wouldn't surprise me either.
It's Tootell Nuanez. We're listening on ESPN Radio. One quick final break. We'll come back. We'll tell you what we got coming up the rest of the week and beyond after this.
Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes too. Book online at CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, who pump it up? Pump it up.
Town Pump always has your favorite snacks and drinks. Check out their new item, Big Sky Spiked Seltzers, variety 12-pack cans for only $14.99. Need a snack? Old Trapper 3 1/4 ounce jerky is just $3.99. Town Pump is there for you, right down the road.
Town Pump, right down the road. Pump it up. Oh, yeah.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
You've chosen the caterer, addressed the invitations, and picked out a cake. But have you decided where to bank? Farmers State Bank offers just what you need as you start your new life together. Checking and savings accounts, electronic banking options, the latest tech, even locally approved mortgages. And with 9 Western Montana locations, there's a Farmers State Bank where you live, work, and play. Congratulations from all of us at Farmers State Bank, an equal housing lender and member FDIC.
Hey folks, Ryan Tootell here, and I'm with Josh of the Advocates Injury Attorneys. Josh, what are people left dealing with after an accident?
Well, quite a few things, actually. We see people that are in pain, they still need to get to work, they need to raise their kids, and now they have to take time to go see doctors and other healthcare providers. They're frustrated with working with the insurance companies and getting the runaround. We'll take on the burden of dealing with the insurance companies so you can get the best settlement possible and get back to your life.
Find your advocate online at montanaadvocates.com. There are a lot of lawyers. You deserve an advocate. Hey, y'all, Ryan Tootell here. ESPN Radio and Widmer Brothers Brewing are teaming up to broadcast Tootell and Nuanez from all over Missoula.
All summer long, register at select locations to win tickets when the Grizz take on the Oregon Ducks. On July 31st, the live broadcasts roll on with Tootell and Nuanez broadcasting live from the Desperado Sports Tavern and Grill.
Come to the Desperado to win tickets to the big game and wash down the best wings in Missoula with a Widmer Brothers Hefeweizen.
This is your chance to snag tickets and check out Tootell and Nuanez live, so come on down to Desperado 4 to 6 on July 31st for your chance to win.
Tootell and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula.
Afternoon. Hi, how are you? Good to be with you. ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. It is Tootell and Nuanez. We are broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris Studios. July is Kurt's 30th birthday. 30 years they've been in business, and they're celebrating by offering you 30% off. That's right, 30% off MSRP on select parts and accessories with the purchase of any new Polaris off-road vehicle, Husqvarna and Beta dirt bike, or any Crest pontoon boat. Some restrictions apply. See Kurtz for details. Get to Kurtz Polaris, Missoula, and Sealy today and tomorrow. Then the month is over, so you got to get in now for their 30-year anniversary sale. If you missed anything in the show, check it out on the podcast. The podcast available all over the place. The podcast is there thanks to the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. I'm going to download some podcasts for my big drive. So here's the deal. Tomorrow, boys and girls, tomorrow, you got to come see us down at the Desperado Sports Tavern. We're doing Wing It Wednesday live from the home of the best wings in the city of Missoula. We are going to be giving away tickets to the Grizzly Oregon football game, another pair of tickets that we're going to pull out of the box there. Between now and then, tonight, tomorrow, go over to the Desperado, write your name, put it in the box, okay? And also, come have a free beer. How about that? Widmer Hefeweizen going to have some free Hefes for you down there at the Desperado starting at 4 o'clock when we go on the air live. So come down to the Desperado and see us tomorrow. You got to be present to win the tickets too. So you put your name in there. You need to be down there. So come on in, hang out with us, spend some time. We'll have some giveaways as well. So it's a fun time. And obviously, I mean, winning tickets to this game, you can't do better than that, Coulter. I mean, you cannot do better than that. Also, tomorrow is our last day of the week. Coulter and I, what in the world? Taking a little vacation here. So out Thursday and Friday. Yeah, you're working.
I'm going to work.
You're just going to work
Oh,
elsewhere.
can't.
Yeah. So we'll be off Thursday and Friday, though. No Tootell and Nuanez. Tootell and Nuanez will be back with you on Monday, and Coulter will be in here, and then I will rejoin the crew on Tuesday of next week. But tomorrow going to be a lot of fun down at the Desperado Sports Tavern, so come hang out with us, spend some time. We'll have an enjoyable time down there on South Russell across from the YMCA.
Can't wait. It could be super fun. Desperado, I think the pioneer sponsor of this show, right?
Just what? Oh yeah, one of the very, very originals. I've been with
when you were doing Tuesdays with Tootell, Desperado advertising.
Yep. Yeah, Brian's been on it for a long time, and I'm certainly looking forward to be. I mean, we've gotten in, we go in there pretty frequently, all things considered, but we have not done the show from there, so it'll be fun to set up shop in there and do it. And then, Coulter, I got to get my CD player fixed because I'm driving the family as soon as the show is over into the minivan and off to Wisconsin. That's a little bit of a hike now.
Yes, it is. So what is the estimated drive time?
Well, it's a 23 to 24 hour of drive. With 3 children, probably we're going to have to stop to pee at least once on that route.
Probably.
So I don't know what we're going to do. And my CD player just broke, and so I'm starting to wonder about the viability of this. But you know what? Onward. You just got to fight the good fight. The kids got to see their grandparents. Boys and girls, we'll see you from the Desperado tomorrow. Good night.
Now, the Montana Club's happy hour features BOGO beverages. Our expertly mixed cocktails, microbrews, domestics, and wine are buy one, get one free 7 days a week from 3 to 5:30. Stop in on Friday for Montini night. Sip on a top shelf martini for only $6, 5:30 to close. When you've worked hard all day and are ready to relax, the Montana Club has got you covered with BOGO happy hour 7 days a week, 3 to 5:30 on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
Alpine Touch has been providing you with the distinct seasonings you know and love for decades. Now, Alpine Touch has something to help you unleash the freshness of all the delicious flavors you need to spice up any meal. Check out Alpine Touch's new coarse grinds, unleashing the fresh taste of the garlic pepper or all-purpose seasonings to please any nose or taste bud. Coarse grinds can be purchased by the pound at retail locations around the state or at alpinetouch.com. Use the code ESPN10 at checkout to get 10% off any online order. Alpine Touch, Montana's special spice.
Les Schwab is proud to introduce two of our best tires ever, just in time for summer. There's our exclusive Reputation, a high-mileage premium passenger tire we believe has the quietest, most comfortable ride ever. Or our exceptionally quiet and smooth all-season traction tire, the Open Range AT. Get up to $150 instant rebate on 4 backcountry MT or AT tires or $50 on 4 road control passenger tires. Les Schwab Tires. Doing the right thing matters. Cannot be combined with other offers. Limited time. Terms and conditions apply. Details at leschwab.com.
On Russell, across from the fairgrounds.
When you need a bank to help ramp up your savings strategy, look to your local bank, Opportunity Bank of Montana. Build confidence in your financial future when you create a rainy day cushion or take care of the nest egg you already have. Opportunity Bank offers options from basic savings to money market accounts and certificates with competitive rates. There's nothing like the feeling of progress, so let's get started today. Come see us at Opportunity Bank of Montana. OpportunityBank.com. Member FDIC.
Hey folks, it's Tootell and Nuanez here, and guess what? Football season is upon us. You know what that means? For the second year in a row, the first hour of every week on Tootell and Nuanez is the Montana Football Hour, 60 minutes dedicated to football across the Treasure State.
And even outside the Treasure State as well. The first Montana Football Hour for 2019 broadcast from the Big Sky Kickoff in Spokane. Throughout the rest of 2019, we'll bring you the best in football coverage, whether it's the Bobcats, the Grizzlies, the Frontier Conference, or high school football in the great state of Montana.
There is nothing better than football season. Coulter and I love it. We know that you love it, and we want to make sure we bring it to you. The coaches, the players, the games, the analysis, opinion, and information that makes football run across the state will be right here, 102.9 ESPN Radio, every Monday from 4 till 5. Be more than just a fan. Be an educated fan. Everything you'll ever need to know about football across the state of Montana will be delivered to you during the Montana Football Hour, presented by Lithia Ford.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana, KKVU HD3 Stevensville, and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula.